Hi, we see that all of you are coming in. We're just going to wait for another minute or two for the other attendees to sign in. And then we'll be ready to start.
"28 people are on. How long are we planning to wait? Oh, Serena.
I think we'll just give it another minute and then we'll be.
Another minute? Yeah. Sounds good. Make sure.
Okay, I think we're good to go, and the others can join in as and when that happens. Hi, everybody. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for joining us on this webinar. Welcome to all of you here and all of you who are joining us on YouTube Live as well. Welcome to the second day of our webinar. Also, welcome back to a lot of you who were here with us even last evening. I'm Ankita from Worldview Education. Worldview Education has been around for about 10 years. We have been working with primarily the Generation Z. We curate programs and learning experiences that will encourage critical thought and critical understanding about global and local problems that we are faced with, and try to work towards resolution for those, thereby becoming a generation of solvers. As a company, one of our core principles has been adaptive capacity, and which is, of course, being tested to its most in the current times that we're living in. The pandemic that we're all experiencing now has obviously affected all of us at an individual and familial level, but also at the level of our local communities, our country, and then as a world itself. And this Generation Z Solvers Interactive is one of our responses to this situation. And we are calling it the season one dialogues for the post COVID-19 world. And this is going to be, this has been a week of webinars starting from yesterday, and it's going to go on for the rest of the week. We have a variety of people coming in for our webinars as panelists, as hosts. We've had an artist yesterday, we've had entrepreneurs. We also, in the coming days, have naturalists, dreamers, all kinds of people. So we hope to see you for more of our webinars as well. Today for this webinar, we have Gowri Varanashi. She's a naturalist and a climber. Usually she splits her time during the year, partly in India, partly in the US, and partly in Peru. She has a multitude of experiences under her wing from her time in the forests, all the way ranging from Agumbe in Karnataka to the Amazon rainforest. And right now she's joining us from Bangalore, India. And I'm going to let her take over in just a moment. Before which, I would just like to run you all who are here on Zoom with us through the different ways that you can interact with Gowri during this session. Below your screen, at the bottom of your screen, you would see you have an option with the hand icon, which is the equivalent of raising your hand. So during the session, at any point, if you feel like you want to ask a question, or if you have something to say, or you're responding to a question that Gowri has asked, please use the raise hand option, and we will give you video or audio access, and you can have that interaction. Other than that, if you would like to ask other questions to Gowri, you may also use the Q&A section, which is again at the bottom of your screen. You can type in your question, and Gowri will respond to it as and when she sees it, and during the session or at the end of the session as well, whichever works for her. And over to Gowri from here. Thank you so much for making time for this. We are so thrilled to be partnering with you and excited to hear what you have to say and show. Over to you.
Thanks, Ankita. Thank you for the introduction. Can everyone hear me? I'm hoping that everyone, you can hear me, right? I'm not stalling right now. Ankita, you can
Yeah,
hear
yeah,
me?
we can hear you.
Awesome. Okay, so
Yeah.
my name is Gowri, and Ankita has done a great introduction. I don't think I should add to it. So, if I'm going to start with sharing a little bit about myself and my schooling, how I got into this field, because I do get a lot of questions from people. How did you get into this? How did you start liking nature and snakes? Snakes. Lots of questions about snakes usually. Uh, but basically, just a little bit about myself. I grew up in an unconventional school called Center for Learning, which is on Magadi Road. And the school is semi residential, which means we would go and stay there alternate nights. And then after 8th standard, we stayed there all week. And we would come back to the city only on weekends. And this place was wild. This campus is just, I feel so grateful, and like it's made me so humble to know that I was lucky to go to a place like this, because it was just so green. There's boulders everywhere, so many trees. I grew up scrambling, boulders and climbing up trees, uh, getting fruit. We had snakes, birds, lots of animals, sloth bears coming and going, leopards coming and going, lorises. I'm going to talk a little bit about lorises later. So I think I got very lucky, but also something that the school, the teachers in the school believe in teaching students is not just concentrating on academics and grades and exams, but how do you educate a person to grow up to be a more well-rounded individual. So there are a lot of the things that they really sort of, put a lot of effort explaining to us was about nature. And they kept telling us, you all need to be aware of what's around you, what we live with, these creatures that we share the world with. We coexist with nature and animals. So we can't just ignore them. So, for example, every evening we used to have something called quiet time, where the entire school, the school is small, it's like 80 people, but the entire school, including teachers, would split up, spread out around campus, and sit all by yourselves quietly and no talking for half an hour every evening. And we could do was listen to our surroundings, see what's around us, and just observe and be there on the land. So I think these kind of things already had started to instill this love for nature in me. And another thing is they would let me do, like, I studied snakes one year, I documented butterflies another year. And this whole habit of wanting to learn and something that was a huge part of my life. So every time we went on a school excursion, I would basically, you know, look at what I was finding and try and identify them. And so this has also become a habit for me in my life. So at a young age, I started volunteering at NGOs. I would come back home on weekends, and then I would go literally the 2 days that I would have, I would go volunteer at Kenneth Anderson Nature Society or some other NGO, and I would do these help them with wildlife surveys. I was an assistant to a PhD student one year. So on weekends, I would come back and I would go with her to Hosur, and we would go to elephant migratory routes and talk to the farmers there. So ever since a young age, I've been interested, and I think I actively sort of engaged myself in this field. And then eventually, of course, I realized at the end of my schooling, I do only want to work in the outdoors and the environmental field. So I applied to colleges and I went to the US and I studied my environmental studies and biology there, my bachelor's. And when I started doing that was when I started going to Peru, and I got the opportunity to go guide people, take people into the jungle, show them animals, teach them about these animals, and teach them just a lot more things about conservation and the threats that the rainforests today face. So, and then of course, I finished my education. I was like, okay, so what am I going to do? And I only looked for work that would keep me mostly outside with people. And eventually, when I got into the education field, I realized this is my thing. I love sharing what I love with other people, my passion, and I love teaching about nature and about animals. And so I realized this is what I'm going to do. And I've been working as a nature connection educator, mostly for kids until now in the US for about 3 years. But this is what I want to bring to the US as well. To India, sorry. And so that's basically a little bit about myself, really quickly, because I want to cover a lot of other information today. If you all have questions, you can ask me as well. Oh, there's already someone asking, how did I get interested in wildlife? Basically, I think, being around that campus where there was so many animals and having adults in my life teach me that it is important to care about them and learn about them was one of the things that got me, thinking about nature and wildlife. And I also had opportunities like, holding snakes when I was in school and interacting with wildlife. And I think that also really made me fall in love with them, because the more you get to learn about them, the more you learn about them, the more you get closer to them, to understanding these animals, the more you realize they are really amazing. There's so much magic in the natural world that we don't even pay attention to usually. So anyway, what I'm gonna do now is I want to make this a little bit fun. I don't want to just sit here and talk. There's going to be a lot of concepts that I'm going to bring today while I'm showing you animals around my garden. So hope you all enjoy it. Question Serena is asking me, was it easy to understand wildlife in a different country and figure whether? So that's the other thing, right? I think the tool that my school gave me, the biggest tool I learned while being in school is how do I go around and identify and learn about the animals wherever I am, doesn't matter where I am. So the first thing I did, you guys won't believe it, but every place I go to, I go and I buy field guides to birds, the common birds of North America, common snakes of North America. So I went and I bought all these field guides when I went to the US, and I immediately learned all the common birds and snakes in the US. And I did the same in Peru as well. Um, so I'm going to just pause on the questions for now because I want to start this garden tour plus the concepts I want to talk about. But please do type out the questions, and I will answer all your questions. Do you have pets? Yes, I have a little kitten right now. She's really cute. So I'm gonna switch to my phone and I'm gonna take you all on this tour. Sorry. Okay. All right. So, Ankita, can you still hear me? All good?
Yes, Gowri, we can hear you.
Perfect. Great. So first, as I'm walking to show you all the first creature that we're going to meet, one of the things that I wanted to start talking about is how we are dependent on nature, right? How interdependency and interconnectedness is something that we all need to, I think, become a lot more aware of and a lot more conscious of. And I think the poll, okay, cool. Have you seen any insects or animals? So you guys all got the question, right? And so what I've been doing since this lockdown is I've been staying sane by going around my garden and really trying to understand what's going on. Because when we start looking at nature in a more close way, we start to realize there's so much going on that we never pay attention to, that we don't know about, right? The stories that unfold, there are animals doing their thing, going about their daily life just the way we are. But usually we don't bother paying attention to them. So one of the things is, what is nature, right? Now, it's a question where I know a lot of people will think, oh, you see wildlife in like these faraway national parks or like, sanctuaries. And that's really where nature is. But if you think about it, we are nature. We're part of nature, right? We come from nature. And even when we look at our homes, what are bricks made of, right? Like even my house right now, like look at this brick. You know, what is this made of, right? It comes from nature. It comes from the earth. Where do we get our water from? Do we ever, we're so spoiled with having water come right out of the tap. Every time we open the tap, there's water gushing out. We never bother to pause and think, hey, where is this water coming from, right? So even fuel and electricity, like all of these things come from nature. Fuel and electricity, it's fossil fuels that we take out from under the ground. And one of the theories is that, this fossil fuel that's been sitting under the ground is actually made from decomposing dead animals and dead matter that's been sitting under the ground, under the earth, in the earth for so long that it's basically changed its form and it's turned into fossil fuel as we call it or as we use it. So the first creature you're all going to meet, okay, is, oh, there it is. Okay, so cute. I'm going to turn the camera around so you all can see. I hope you all can see the little bat hanging right there in my balcony. So this little bat, can everyone, I wonder if I can zoom into it a little bit more. No, I can't. Okay, so I hope everyone got to see that. Could you all see the, Ankita, could you see the bat?
Yeah. Yes, Gowri.
Okay, awesome. So that is a fruit bat, and I think it's the short-nosed fruit bat. The other fruit bat in India is the flying fox, the huge bats that we see at dusk, flying in huge numbers above in the sky. The other type of bats that exist are the insectivorous bats, which you will see, they're also small, and you'll often see them at dusk buzzing back and forth in the air. And the amazing thing that they're doing there is they're catching bugs and mosquitoes and insects in mid-flight, in mid-air. They're catching, and that's why they're zipping back and forth like that, right? So again, with this whole COVID situation, right, that we're in right now, people are starting to hate bats, dislike bats, get really scared about bats. But the truth of the matter is, unless you're trying to handle it or catch it or eat it, not cooked properly, you're not going to catch a disease. If we respect that this animal is here and we give it that space it needs, it's going to go about its business. And guess what? We are all interdependent and interconnected, because when this bat flies over to my neighbor's papaya tree, for example, and eats the papaya and comes right back, what it's actually also doing in the process is it's picking up the pollen, right? And it's pollinating all these plants for us. So the two fruit bats put together are responsible for maybe like over 100 different species of plants that they pollinate in India. And the insectivorous bat, the same way, does its job by controlling the insect populations. So as when we think about interdependence, it's like, where does our honey come from? We need honeybees, right, for honey. And what are honeybees also doing for us? They're pollinating plants. So a lot of plants that, fruits that we eat are being pollinated by, oh, the video is hanging. Okay, I'm going to change my location. Let's see if that helps. Oops. Okay, hopefully this helps. So basically, bats and all these creatures are actually doing us huge favors, right? They are pollinating for us. They're producing things like honey, like honeybees. And they're pollinating even our vegetables and stuff like that in farms and gardens. So they're so important. All these are called ecosystem services, right? They're so important for our ecosystem. And so basically, the other thing that I wanted to talk about when we look at interdependency is, what we don't think about is the small basic systems that are in place. For example, the most basic system that's in place is the sun's energy. When we get, how do we,
we need plants, right, to eat. So what happens, what are these plants doing for us? They're taking the sun's energy and they're going through photosynthesis, and then we eat the plant, which basically whatever they're producing gets turned in our system into carbohydrates or simple sugars, and that's how we are able to survive. So just think about this like crazy concept, right? We need the sun, we need the sun's energy, we need plants that have chlorophyll to be able to perform photosynthesis, and then we can eat it, and then to eat fruits, or to have more of those plants, we need pollination, so then we need the pollinators. So it's just this like crazy, if you look at the large scale, it's all a web of these different systems that are in place. And what's really crucial for us is to not destroy those systems, because once we start destroying those systems, we're going to be in big trouble, because we're not going to be able to do a lot of these things that nature is basically providing us for our survival for free. So, the next thing I'm going to show you all is okay, I'm going to show you this. I had spiderlings recently at home, and they kind of left and disappeared, but I still have this. It's a little bit old now, but this is, I hope everyone can see that. It's a sunbird nest. It's a nest built by the purple-rumped sunbird, and they designed this so well. It hangs on these like really thin twigs, but it's amazing, the the amount of strength that this nest has. The way it's been built, it's so strong. It does not. We have had rain and thunder and all these things, and nothing happens to the nest. And recently, as I was doing more research, so one of the things that I do, obviously I don't get all this knowledge just like that, right, by looking at something. So every time I see something, I put in the effort to go and do research on it. So I recently found this nest, and I was like, okay, I'm going to start reading up on these nests. And I found out that the reason why these nests are so strong is because the sunbirds go and actually collect spider webs, and they use the spider web to build the nest. They mix it with plant materials, and they actually weave that, and that's why it's so strong and it doesn't fall off the tree. And it's just, when you come to know such things, it's just mind blowing. Like, I had no idea that sunbirds did that. So the other thing that I wanted to talk about a little bit is the psychological benefits of nature, right, for us. And this is again going into interdependency in a more sort of like human perspective, or like a personal perspective, right? Coexistence. Yes, coexistence as well. But nowadays, there's so many more studies being done that show that our time spent in nature is actually so much more beneficial than we normally think it is. For example, someone did a study. I read a Harvard Health publication. It's an online publication, and they did a study that compared two sets of people, right? One group of people went walking in a natural green setting for 90 minutes, and the other group of people walked around in like a city, street or whatever for like 90 minutes, so an urban setting. And what they found was that the people who walked in the natural setting had lower activity in the prefrontal cortex, which is associated with these repeated negative thoughts that we have caused by stress or anxiety, or just like negative thought that's bothering us over and over again. And so it's amazing that just by going and spending some time outside in nature literally changes your brain activity and what your brain is doing, which is just mind-blowing as well to me. And ecotherapy and nature therapy are all becoming a huge thing. It not just helps you with that, but it helps people with behaviors, feeling anxiety, feeling stress. It relaxes you. You feel confident in yourself. It makes you happy. You realize that there's all these other things happening in the world to be amazed about, so why am I stressed out right now? But nature does a lot for us. And so it is important that we pay attention and really start learning about these connections and things like that. So one more thing I wanted to show you all was, if you can see way up in the tree there, I don't know how clear that is. It might not be super clear. There's like a big cluster of leaves. I don't know if you can see it, but that is a weaver ant nest. Weaver ants are really cool. So what weaver ants do is they come together. So they're an arboreal ant that lives in colonies. So that's very unique, right? A lot of ants don't live like so close together in colonies, but they come together and they all hold on to the edges of these leaves and they sometimes form a chain, and then they pull the leaves together and they use the silk of the larvae of the ants themselves. So the larvae produces this fine silk, and they use the silk to stitch the leaves together and attach it and make this huge ball of stitched leaves. And they all live together in that colony there, and they move around and they communicate between colonies. So this tree out here has about one big nest and two small ones. So they actually communicate between the big one and the small one, and they move around. And here's the weaver ant for all of you. Here's the cool thing. So they actually come walking through the canopy and they come onto our mango tree right here. There's one. Hello. I hope you can all see this one. And then there's more here. So the cool thing is they walk around here, and then I eventually came to notice that we have this little guppy pond here. So because they're arboreal ants and they live up in trees, they actually come down, and I've seen them sitting by our guppy pond and trying to get whatever water they can, because even ants need water. So yeah, they would come down and they were like getting all the water they could and drinking it up, and then going back up the tree. But they also carry a lot of other things up the tree as well. So yeah, so basically I think for me, even plants are something that we need to think about when we decide, okay, we're going to care for nature. Because what are plants giving us? They give us wood to build stuff with, they give us fruits. Plants are giving us vegetables and fruits and all kinds of other things. We even use the leaves sometimes, we use the seeds. And not just that, it's giving us oxygen, right? That's like the most crucial thing we don't think about is when a plant is breathing, it's taking in the carbon dioxide, which is not great for us, and it's giving out oxygen, which is great for us because we get to breathe this wonderful oxygen that we need for basic survival, right? So one last thing. Oh, you're all lucky. I have a checkered keelback. It's a baby checkered keelback, which is our Indian water snake that lives here, and it eats the guppies in our guppy pond. Um, but I'm gonna try and see if I can get you all a glimpse of the face of the checkered keelback. It sticks its head out of a hole on the brick wall, so just see if you can see it. It's going to be a little tricky, but let's see. Oh, okay. I don't know how many of you saw it, but it was sticking its head out. Um, but the checkered keelback is a super cool guest to have at home, and I'm very excited about it. Oh, yeah, someone saw it. Okay, great. Some people got to see it. Amazing. But, again, talking about like how everything is interconnected, the guppies in the pond are controlling mosquito larvae for us. The snake is then feeding on the guppies, and then the snake becomes a meal, sadly, to something else. And there are ants coming down to drink the water. They're building nests, which are feeding birds. Birds go and feed on ants, right? Often, a lot of the birds that eat insects. And the spiders are important because then the birds use the spider web to build their nest. So as you can see, like, we're all kind of connected in this. And I'm going to go back inside now. That was my little garden tour. Hold on one second. So I'm going to come to your questions now, actually, in just like a few more minutes. So, and I think, the reason why I am drawn to all these things. And the reason why I look at these things is because we come from nature, right? That's like the main thing. Hold on 1 second. I'm just going to switch here.
Okay. Ankita, can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can see you as well now.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you, Gowri.
Ankita, can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Awesome. Okay, so finally, I think the last few things that I want to talk about is there's so much. I want to like share so much, but um, there's really, I think, not enough time for this. But I just wanted to lastly, how much time do we have actually? Getting close to like questions time, 15 minutes. Okay, so very quickly, I'm just going to go over um, some of the things that I think we need to change when we think about how do we coexist with nature, right? We have this idea that we humans are special. We're like the only human species and we're way above nature and way above animals. I don't know how that came about, but that is something that often people, kind of think. And that's not really true because way back in the day, interestingly enough, I've been reading this book called Sapiens, and it talks about how there were other human species, humanoid species, one point, along with Homo sapiens. And in fact, humans used to wait for a predator like a lion or tiger or whatever to kill something, and then they would wait for all these predators to eat their portion, and then they would leave, and then we would basically go and eat the leftovers, right? So there has been a lot that has changed since those days, obviously, but I think something that we need to remember is that we do come from nature and we are completely dependent. Every single thing that we use actually finally comes from nature, right? um, so, and also, like, I think changing our idea of where they belong versus where we belong. Like, I know a lot of people will say, oh, spiders don't belong in the house. I don't like spiders. I'm going to take off all the spider webs. But maybe that is where we need to start changing our perspective, because we are part of nature, right? Why do we do this thing where we're like, no, spiders don't belong in the house? Why? Because we've built a house. What are the materials we use to build the house? Where did that material come from? Unfortunately, it came from nature, right? So it's kind of a funny thing that we kind of differentiate between like what belongs where, when we really don't have the right to do that. Spiders, and like, for example, like elephant migratory routes have gone through like so many places for so long, and now of course we go and we build a road and we decide, nope, elephants not allowed to walk along these roads. How do we get the right to say that, right? So I think the biggest way to, I think, change all these ideas and the way we coexist with nature, and even kind of quickly to go over like conservation, I think the main thing to do is to educate and for us to change how we look at our green spaces, because no matter how small the green space, as you saw in my garden, there is so much going on. It doesn't matter if it has to be a park. We can protect natural spaces even in urban settings, right? There's so much life happening. um, and I wanted to quickly share some stories about just like some fun stories. Ankita, shall I just share like two maybe? What do you think?
Yeah, sure. We can.
Because I know I'm running late. Um, so one of the stories that I really want to share happened in Peru. The first time I went to the Amazon rainforest, we started tracking sounds of peccary, which is wild boar, with a local guy, and we started following the tracks. And eventually we came to the stream. And when we got there, we thought, oh, we're not seeing anything. What's going on? We can't right now. We heard the wild boars or peccary. And suddenly my husband Paul was like, oh my God, look in the stream. This anaconda actually caught one of the peccaries. That's why they stopped calling. And it's already constricting the animal. And I was actually able to get a photo. So that's the photo for all of you to look at. It was which was just crazy. And we also, at a different time, caught a really big anaconda, one of the biggest we've ever seen. It was 18.6 feet. And there's the picture of that. So yeah, that was just like a really special moment for me, just because I didn't think that I would see, an anaconda on my first trip, but I did, which was really nice. And my other memory is hearing hyenas at my school. They sound like they're cackling at you or laughing at you. And they do it at night, and it's a pretty spooky sounding call, but at the same time it's pretty amazing because you wonder how they sound so much like a person laughing. uh, so those are your striped hyenas or Asian hyenas. These are the ones that are found here in Asia. And to quickly, maybe we can skip, should I talk about the tree or skip the tree? Okay, so I got to climb a really big tree. Ankita is going through all of them, so I'm going to quickly go through all of them. I had the privilege of climbing a huge tree, 150-foot tree. I don't know how many years old, probably like 1,000, like hundreds and hundreds of years old. And it was something crazy because when I got to the top of it, it was like a room up there. Each branch was so wide and so big that it felt like I was in a room, a tree. And it was just the most mind-blowing. And then you get to see what lives up on a tree canopy, right? All these bromeliads that never grow on the bottom of the forest, insects that you never see on the bottom of the forest, ants that you only see up on this tree. So there's a quick video, if you want to share the video and play it really quickly, of me climbing it. Oh my God, there's so many questions. When can I answer all these questions? The book name is Sapiens, and the author, it's a little hard to pronounce. I can type an answer for that while you all watch the video. Sapiens by Ferrari. Okay, so last story is this was, I used to go from my school, they used to take us to Wayanad, which is the Western Ghats, and I had a senior there, like an ex,
We
told
lost
me
your
that,
voice.
hey, I've been noticing that in this one spot. Sorry? Oh, you lost me?
Your voice a little bit. Can you just repeat that last bit?
Yeah, the slender loris, right?
Yeah.
So my school used to take us to this place, Wayanad. So it's the Western Ghats in Kerala. And my senior there came and told me, you can't tell anyone else, but I'll just take you to this one spot in the forest where the slender loris has been walking and coming by every evening. But you have to sit really quietly and not move and just be super patient and wait. So for 3 days in a row, I went and sat with him for about 3 hours each evening, waiting for this beautiful thing to come by. And then the last day, finally, I got to see the slender loris. And these are really unique creatures. So go look them up, learn about them. They're actually venomous if they bite you. They're really interesting. They don't have tails, so they look kind of weird, what's that creature in Lord of the Rings? It looks a little bit like that. But anyway, you guys should look this up and learn more about slender lorises. But bigger message to you all is look out of your gardens, look outside your house. There's so much going on. You can start learning about all these creatures. There's not that many questions, so I could quickly. Don't I get scared of wild animals like tigers and lions? Yes, I'm definitely scared, which is why I do respect them and I do respect their space. And so when I do try and look at them, I make sure, I keep a distance. And but there's also, again, they're scary, but you don't have to be scared of them. Because if you understand where your boundary is and you understand where the animal is, the animal also knows not to come attack a human. Interestingly, I don't know if you all know about this, but the predators, especially big cats, don't see humans as prey because we're two-legged creatures and we stand. Because four-legged animals are their prey because they can go and get their neck really easily. So because they can't figure out how to get to our neck, they don't know how to actually come attack us, except for of course the Sundarbans. Um, do you suggest an app or website to know more about these animals in our garden? Honestly, if you can buy field guides like books to, snakes of India, birds of India, spiders of India, that's really great because it's also supporting these books. But not just that, there's so much on the internet nowadays that you can actually go and put a description and things will pop up and you'll be able to learn so much just from like just for taking that little extra effort to go and start researching. Even if it's just online, you will get a lot of information. What was one of the best lessons you learned as a child in the wild? Oh, so many. I think one of the biggest is patience and curiosity, right? Like that's one of the other things that draws me to nature is everything is so beautiful. They're all, even the insects, the plants. And if you keep your curiosity alive and ask questions, why is this leaf purple and not green? Go look that up. There's a reason why some leaves are purple and not green. Again, like it's just keep that curiosity alive and go look these things up and learn about why things are a certain way. Why do you see ants behaving in a certain way? Go look it up. First, you have to observe and have patience when you observe in nature, and then you go look it up. So can you start working with nature? Yeah, I think so. There's no harm in being passionate about it. It might not ever become your like main job, but you can always, I think, as a passion, learn about nature on the side, even start going and educating other people, because I think education is key nowadays with conservation and coexistence. Education is going to become really, really important to spread that love and awareness for these other beings that we share this planet with. um, how do you think we can try to repair the damage to nature we've done in the Whew. I think, you know what, let's change our lifestyles. Let's be less consumeristic, let's consume less. There's so many things that we probably usually would buy and waste money on that we haven't bought or had the choice of buying during this lockdown. So think about some of the items that maybe you guys have realized, oh wait, I don't actually need that in life. So just live simple. Like, if we all live simple, then I think we can kind of, and also let's give back, plant trees, green any space that you can. Anytime you green a space, animals will come find it and start living in that space and they will make it a home. So we can also give back, and that's how also we can do conservation work, right? Individually we can give back by planting trees, greening spaces. 70% of people are non-vegetarians. Do you think the species are depleting because of this? And well, most non-veg eaters are going to be eating animals that we have bred for eating, like cows and goats. And so for me, chickens, my concentration or my passion is more to do with wildlife. So I don't think if you're eating non it's the problem is that how they raise the meat and how they raise these animals are what is not environmentally friendly. So I don't think the problem itself is in eating meat, but if you can maybe figure out ways to get meat that has been raised a little bit more healthily and less use of feed, animal feed and water and all these things, then there are ways I think that we can try and balance that out. But it's a little bit more tricky than just me simply answering that question.
There's an interesting question here, Gowri, about how do we fit into this ecosystem anymore? Would you like to say something about that?
How do we fit into it? See, I think at the end of the day, we are also an animal, and we are part of nature, and whether we like it or not, we're part of this whole life cycle that's happening on this planet. So I think, back in the day, the way humans fit into it was a lot more closer to nature and closer to the way animals lived. And now our lifestyle is what has made us so kind of different and set back from the way animals and live, right? So I think, just trying to, I think the way we can fit in a more healthy way is trying to understand the natural world and animals, and maybe, like I said before, like change our lifestyle, you know, change how we live, change how we consume things. Because as soon as the demand for certain products go down, hopefully that will also change the way things get produced on this planet, and less resources used, right? So it's all connected, and it is a very complicated web of connections, unfortunately. And we do have to start doing a lot more thinking about how to change some of the systems that we have got, like bad habits that I think we as humans have fallen into. I think I want to answer more questions, especially like the rock climbing questions, but I don't want to keep going because I know I've already gone over time. Maybe, I don't know, maybe they can, I don't know, contact me on Instagram or somewhere and ask me questions, and I will try my best to see if I can answer them.
Cool. Why don't we just take maybe one or two last questions?
Yeah. Okay.
One where somebody has said, how do you handle cockroaches in your kitchen? Do you let them be, or do you shoo them off in a non-harmful way? For all of us living in the cities, this would be a good.
Yeah. Cockroaches, I am definitely guilty of killing in the past. Although I've seen jungle cockroaches in the jungle, and those I do not touch because, those are kind of have their, like, I guess, place in the ecosystem. And cockroaches in the house, I'm trying to think of what they could help with. And I think they do maybe eat little bugs and stuff, but um, I do definitely prefer keeping the spiders and the spider webs because they catch insects. I don't think there's, honestly, I think I'm going to start trying to just release them back outside because I don't think there's any harm in doing it. But I also don't think I would feel, you know, I think that's one thing that I think is left up to the individual person to decide what they want to do.
Okay. And one more very urban nature centric question that would be nice if we could hear from you is, what do you have to say to people who complain about bird feces being a problem?
Well, honestly, okay, even to cockroaches, I guess the thing is, we have taken up so much space on this planet. As you all know, during this COVID situation, all these animals have been coming out just because we have let the spaces be. And there's been elephants walking on the streets. There was a rhino walking in Nepal on the street. The civet cats coming out. We have actually taken so much of their habitat and just poured concrete all over it, built stuff all over it, that honestly, if a bird poops, it's going to poop. How can we, like, tell a bird, hey, can you not poop here, versus hey, can you poop here? We really can't. So I think that's something that, again, this is where I'm saying, like, we have to change our ideas of nature, I think, and how we perceive it and how we sort of react to what we see. And I think our reactions are really important. The more we learn to let it go and say, hey, this used to be the birds' homes too, right? And it still is. All these urban spaces are also home to birds, to spiders, to insects, to praying mantises, to snakes, right? To rats. The rats come in, the snakes come and eat the rats. We need all these things going on even in urban spaces. So I think we're just going to have to change that kind of problems that we have towards seeing cobwebs everywhere or birds pooping in places. I think it's all us. We really need to change the way we look at things.
Thank you. I know there are so many more questions over here. And I really think we should do like a second round of the session with just people asking questions and answers.
Actually, that's a good idea. Like maybe have them come back and just ask me questions so I can just answer.
Yeah, we should try and do that definitely.
Yeah.
But this has been so great. It's been so insightful. Thank you so much for making the time. And thank you to all the participants for being so enthusiastic and so curious. Please feel free to reach out to her on her Instagram handle, and she will try and respond to as much as she can over there. Other than that, thank you so much for showing up and coming here. We have more webinars that are scheduled later today and as well as in rest of the week. You can get to know more about those on our social media handles, which are on your screen. And also, please get in touch, continue conversations on these handles with us. We'd be happy to hear from you. That's it. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Gowri. Thank you to all the participants for being here.
Okay, some people are saying one more session for questions.